An elite Colombian police unit killed Pablo Escobar in a shootout, cornering him here in this house where he had been hiding in the city of Medellin. Mr. Escobar was gunned down yesterday, and Colombian authorities say its message to other drug lords is to surrender or you will be killed.
Escobar was the symbol of violence, of corruption, of murders for the past years.
The day Hermilda Gaviria gave birth to a bouncing baby boy, she had no clue she had just brought into the world one of the most menacing and cunning narcotics lords who would climb the stairs to power and wealth at a very early age. The young boy with sharp eyes and innocent features had always been curious about the world, and it led him to find hacks around making tons of easy money, even at the expense of his ethics. This is the story of Pablo Emilio Escobar, the Colombian narco lord who shook the world with his uncanny skills for substance trafficking. Born on December 1st, 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, Escobar built an army of smugglers and an empire with the money he earned through narcotics trafficking. Despite having supporters, Escobar's life was peppered with murders, extortions, corruptions, and narcotics trafficking, which made him a target of the authorities and led to his unfortunate demise. He was gunned down in Medellin, Colombia by law enforcement, but he left behind a legacy and incredible stories that would live on forever. Come join us as we expose some brutal truths about Escobar's life, his illegal trade, and his family. Pablo Escobar was born in a poor family. His father was a farmer, and his mother was a teacher, and Escobar grew up fighting poverty. It affected his tender mind, and he became determined to earn a lot of money and attain a luxurious life at any cost. This pushed him to venture into the world of crime when he was a teenager. Later in the 1970s, he created the Medellin cartel and began producing and trafficking illegal substances. This cartel single-handedly dominated production and supply of cocaine to the United States. Pablo Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao in March 1976 when he was 26 years old and Maria was 15. The Henao family didn't approve of Escobar's social status, so the pair eloped. Juan Pablo Escobar, now also known as Sebastian Marroquin, is the son of Pablo Escobar. He was born on February 24, 1977. Pablo also had a daughter named Manuela Escobar, who was born on May 25, 1984. On the other side of his reported promiscuity, Pablo Escobar was a family man. He was a loving father and a dutiful husband, and ensured that his family was well taken care of. He had a strong emotional bond with both of his children, and they also adored him. Despite being born to a narcotics lord with a penchant for death and destruction, Juan revered his father and was blind to his misdeeds. But that's because, in his early life, Escobar never told him what he did. He gave Juan an idea of his business when he was 7, but even then, he was too young to understand what his father's profession was.
When I was 7 years old, he told me, after he killed the minister, and when we went to Panama, he told me that he was a bandit. So a man who gives you love every day tells you he's a bandit, it's difficult to judge him.
As he became a teen, he slowly started to understand the depth of his father's crimes. After Pablo killed off public figures, they would then have to leave their home and relocate repeatedly. But because of the love he was enveloped in and the rapport he had with his father, Juan never paid much attention to how ruthless Escobar truly was.
Before this, before you really knew, what kind of father was he?
Well, he was...
as far back as you can remember.
Well, I remember him giving me a lot of love, being at home with me and my family. He was a very good man with me. I received a lot of love from him.
Due to Escobar's growing number of crimes, they would often have to be on the run. But even this wasn't enough to cause a rift between father and son.
Considering the life he gave you, the life on the run, the threats to your life, the poverty eventually, is there a part of you that also hates him?
No, there's no chance I could hate my father. I was willing to give my life for him. That's how deeply I love him.
Pablo Escobar was also considered a hero in the eyes of poor Colombians, as he did a lot for them with the wealth he had created. A Colombian magazine even called him Robin Hood for his contribution to the poor. They praised him for stealing money from rich people and giving it to the underprivileged. He built hospitals and restaurants for the poor and even bought a neighborhood to shelter the homeless in Medellin. which gave him a good reputation among them. This is also why Juan had a hard time understanding who his father was. Was he a goon or a person with a good heart?
I also remember when we went to see the poor villages in Colombia to help them, and that's the father that I knew at the beginning. But of course, he's now more remembered thanks to his violence, not for his good behavior.
But being someone who enjoyed corruption and violence so much, it was impossible for Escobar to hide his true nature from his family. Often, his acts of goodwill would have traces of treachery, which proved that he was a criminal all the way through. Winning was important for Escobar, which is why even during backyard soccer matches or board games with his family, he cheated to stay ahead or win.
Well, he didn't want to lose. He was always cheating, even to me or to my mom, to everybody. He didn't want to lose at all. When he played soccer, the game only ended when he was winning. We used to play Monopoly, and yes, he hid all the money and everything. And even if he lose a lot, he was always winning, and I didn't know why, but he was making a lot of, he was cheating a lot.
But Pablo Escobar loved his family. He never shied away from showering his wealth onto his family. He bought expensive gifts for both of his children and gave them a luxurious life others could only imagine. But it all changed for the family one day. Juan was only 16 years old when his father was gunned down on a rooftop in Medellin, Colombia, and the incident brought untold misfortune to him, his mother, and his sister. Escobar's downfall began when the authorities tried to arrest and extradite him to the U.S. in the late 1980s. He started getting paranoid and retaliated more violently. Other than trafficking substances, he was involved in kidnappings and taking the lives of many innocent people.
In addition to running his billion-dollar cartel, the 44-year-old Escobar was accused of waging a terror campaign. Hundreds of people were killed by Escobar's assassins.
On January 30th, 1983, he attempted to take the life of the head Colombian security officer with a car blast. The target was missed, but the incident took the lives of 21 innocent civilians and injured many more, including children, waiting for the school bus. In 1989, he ordered his men to take the life of Luis Carlos Galan, a presidential candidate who always spoke against substance trafficking. He sent him many death threats, but in the end, had him gunned down at a political rally in August that year. The next week, he also ordered violence against civilians and law enforcement agencies who'd raided their hubs. This also included the headquarters of the late Galan, which was broken down to bits.
Colombia's drug bosses struck back today, bombing and burning buildings and homes in Medellin, a stronghold of the drug cartel where troops this week carried out dozens of raids.
In November the same year, he brought down Avinaca Flight 203, carrying 110 people, because he believed that the then presidential candidate Cesar Gaviria was aboard. The number of people who lost their lives in Escobar's hand is not recorded, but according to his son, Juan Escobar, the number is close to 3,000.
How many murders is he directly or indirectly responsible for?
Well, there is not an official record of that, but I believe that it is almost about 3,000 people.
Once I was there for a month, I started to see bodies throughout Medellin.
So what did the law enforcement of Colombia do to stop him? They arrested him in 1991, but he demanded his own luxury prison. The authorities were forced to accept his terms, as it was the only way to capture him. The prison was later nicknamed La Catedral, and it was nothing short of a 5-star hotel.
After months of negotiations, Pablo Escobar was flown by government helicopter to a comfortable jail in his hometown, where some American authorities worry he could still run his business.
Putting the Colombian authorities to shame, Escobar escaped La Catedral in July 1992.
Escobar, a ruthless killer, escaped from his own luxury prison when authorities tried to transfer him to another jail.
The government asked him to surrender in exchange for a fair trial, but the backlash received from the general public forced the president to resign from his position.
Colombian President Cesar Gaviria says, should Escobar surrender, the government will guarantee his life and a fair trial. But the president is under fire. His army blamed for the escape, his credibility staked on capturing the boss of the Medellin cartel.
Escobar was now officially a fugitive, and the law enforcement agencies of Colombia and the DEA from the U.S. began a search to hunt him down. In December of 1993, the DEA finally tracked Escobar down. He was hiding at his aunt's house in Medellin. The authorities ran an operation and managed to gun him down. His lifeless body lay on the roof of the neighboring house.
When Pablo Escobar was killed on that rooftop, the very first message transferred over the radio was, "Viva Colombia! Matamos a Pablo Escobar. Long live Colombia. We've just killed Pablo Escobar."
He'd been on the run for 16 months by that point. The police had tracked him down through a phone call he made to his son, Juan. Him, his mother, Maria Victoria, and sister, Manuela, were under police custody when DEA conducted the operation.
Pablo Escobar had been a fugitive for more than a year and a half after escaping from this prison, where police say he still ran his cocaine empire.
When Juan learned about his father's death, he was devastated beyond imagination. Enraged, he took an oath to erase the existence of his father's killers. But even being his father's son, Juan Escobar had never harmed a single soul. Once he calmed down and came back to his senses, he informed the authorities that he would never walk in his father's footsteps.
In that moment, did you want to kill everyone?
Yeah, in that moment, yes. The 10 first minutes, yes. And that's why 10 minutes after that, I called the press and I tell that I will never do anything to continue my father's steps. And that's the second threat, peace. And that's the only one that I've been living every day since then.
Reportedly, Juan was unconventionally empathetic for the son of a violent narcotics lord, and during his teen years, used to request his father not to harm the civilians. Pablo Escobar's demise was a win for the Colombian government, as they managed to collapse the Medellin cartel and their illegal narcotics trade.
With the Medellin cartel virtually out of business now in terms of production of cocaine with the death of Escobar, now it permits the Colombian government to focus on the only other major group of organizations, drug traffickers, that are right now producing most of the world's cocaine.
But this affected Escobar's family. Things turned difficult for Juan, his mother, and his sister, as Escobar's vast properties were taken away by rival cartels. The authorities seized the remainders, forcing the Escobar family to become homeless. Pablo had hidden stashes of money underground across Medellin, and also inside the walls and floorboards of many of his houses, but Juan and his family never got access to them.
The discovery of another safe is the latest chapter in the story of a home that once belonged to Pablo Escobar. Construction crews found it Monday after knocking down one of the remaining walls of the waterfront mansion.
The United Nations backed away from helping them. Airlines refused to sell them tickets when they decided to leave the country, leaving the family in a helpless situation. It became so dire that Juan had to change his name.
Your name these days is Sebastian Marroquin.
Yeah.
Is that because the Escobar name is too much to carry?
It is because the airlines didn't want to sell any plane tickets to travel and to get away from violence, you know.
When they began to receive death threats, they used their remaining money to live in a hotel and hired bodyguards to protect them from hotel guests and haters. But when their money ran out, they changed their names and left for Argentina to start fresh.
So that was when you could leave the country with your mother and your family?
The next day we changed our names. We could fly without any problems.
But in 1999, an Argentinian judge pressed charges against Juan and his mother for money laundering, blackmailing, and kidnapping. But he'd never committed any such crimes. The charges were later dismissed. The whole incident affected Juan's sister, Manuela, who is now known as Juana. This pushed her into a deep depression, and she tried to take her own life multiple times. But things have been under control, and Manuela is living with her brother now. Even after so much corruption and accumulation of black money, Escobar never regretted his choices.
Did your father ever express any regret?
I don't think he expressed any regret at all.
About anything?
About anything. He thought he was doing the right thing.
But Juan was wise enough to not follow his father's footsteps. He became an architect in Argentina and is now a lecturer and writer. In 2014, he published a book called Pablo Escobar, My Father, where he spoke about the truths of his father. Unlike in his teen years, he now doesn't believe his father to be a hero and requests everyone not to idolize his wrongdoings. Despite helping the poor, he was a cold-hearted criminal and took away the lives of many innocents. But my father is very far from being a hero. Some of these publications want to present him as a hero, so they end up leaving an unclear message about the consequences of his actions. I always say that if someone reads my book and wants to become Pablo Escobar, then I did a bad job, he said in an interview. In recent years, he has shed his new name and embraced the old one. Juan Escobar is proud of his identity and isn't afraid to hide it anymore.
You talk about the greatest prize being anonymity. Why have you given that up?
No, I'm no longer hiding because I don't want to hide. I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do any harm to anybody. I'm not proud of his violence, but I am proud of his love for me and to my mother and sister. And everybody's right if they want to love him, because he made some things that make you love him and some things that make you hate him.
Pablo Escobar always argued that his actions were to flee poverty and earn money. Even during his reign, he wanted to build enough wealth, not just to provide for his family, but to give them a luxurious life that he'd never gotten growing up. Escobar had indeed achieved what he'd aimed for, but he had to choose the path of violence and immorality, and had to pay the price with his life. His evil actions didn't spare his family either. Rather, it pushed them back to the life Pablo Escobar had wanted to leave behind. But by not following his father's footsteps, Juan ensured that the cycle of violence didn't go on. He has since appeared in many interviews and now preaches peace and honesty. Many brutal truths of Pablo Escobar have come out through these interviews, and we got to see the other side of the coin as well. The warm and loving father hidden behind the shadow of the notorious narco kingpin. His story makes us wonder, would he still be alive and living happily with his family had he decided to remain the poor farmer's boy? The world will never know. What do you think about Pablo Escobar's turbulent life and rise to power? Have you heard any unbelievable and brutal tales about this narco lord? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video to show your support, subscribe to our channel, and press the bell for notifications of future uploads. See you soon with the next exciting story.